The reason we've all been invited here today is to discuss waste, and specifically designing out waste. My name is Matthew Edis, and this is Sylvia Jujva. We've been working with Envirowise. They're tasked by the government to assist that reduction in waste sent to landfill from construction projects. And so what they asked us to look at was, why is waste not being addressed more intensely with greater success in the construction industry in the design phase of projects?
We're focusing here today on the smaller projects. For the particular aspect, I think that it might be more difficult to reduce waste in a project that is smaller, that has fewer people working on it, but perhaps maybe there's opportunities. Because it's smaller, it's easier to control. People want to know, why do I need to do this? Why should I do this? I've not heard about it before. I know about sustainability, but how does waste fit into that? And then tell me how to quantify it. Give me the tools to be able to reduce the waste, to look at how much I'm creating.
There are opportunities at every stage, and you have to, it's not just a one-off process of, I'll identify those opportunities at stage A, B, and that's my job done. It's actually identify what you can do at A, B, then what you can do at C, what you can do at D, and probably C and D are probably together.
Yeah.
And then at stage E, when you get into detailed design, there are more opportunities. So, at stage A, B, you're not going to be thinking about waste from the services that are putting in ways of procuring it better, but you'll be thinking about the bigger building blocks of the thing at that time and how you might be able to repeat whole elements that can be built off-site.
And the contractor really views all these issues from a risk point of view, like risk cost analysis, and then of course within, say, a traditional brickwork solution would try and reduce waste within that by not over-ordering or trying to look after the product when it arrived on site so there wasn't too many movements.
When I've had early contractor involvement, it's been a QS or a planning guy who's got a very broad brush understanding of the issues. He doesn't actually physically do anything himself, probably doesn't spend much time on site himself either, and doesn't really know what all these issues are. Yeah.
If you're doing construction management or that design manager role, it fits, to my mind, sort of ideally with that person. It's one of the aspects that they should be considering. And again, you get that earlier because of the nature of the contract, and that's, I think that the plasterboard, the dry lining thing is a great example. On most of the large projects we do, that's still a prescriptive package, which is kind of a nonsense. There's no need for it to be a prescriptive package. It's bits of plasterboard. It could be a performance-based specification, which the guys that are experts in can find the best way to translate that. But it's still a lot of traditional contracts and a lot of prescriptive work for the design team, which maybe it doesn't sit best with the design team.
You're not going to get that interface between your plasterboard subbies around the design table, but there isn't actually any forum for plasterboard, for plastering guys to ever talk with architects. We never meet them, apart from my brother knows some plasterboards and I've met them down the pub, and they find it quite weird to find an architect asking them about what they do and things like that. And there just needs to be that sort of forum for the trades to talk to the designers and to exchange knowledge.
It was said somewhere here that experience is one of the popular answers, but we're saying that designers don't get to see the waste on site, designers don't get to talk to the plasterboard guys. Well, they're there for 2 years on site, and you can have sort of debriefing workshops on site. They just have to be driven by someone.
I think contractors are way ahead of us as designers because they're having to actively engage with it, and they physically see all the skips of waste and everything. We don't we're divorced from all of that, and I don't think, although we might be doing a design stage code assessment, if you look at the waste bits of that, it's all to do with, is the contractor going to have a site waste management plan in place? Well, of course he is, because he has to. But there's a kind of, it's not the thinking isn't coupled between, what I'm designing now impacts on the contractor's ability to carry out that SWMP, and that connection is what we need to create.
Yeah, well, that's what we were discussing previously, that if you tie it into, for example, BREEAM, and you make it that in order to get one credit, you have to produce a feasibility statement, or you have to produce a site waste management plan at design stage, that's going to create a task for people that they do, And so it'll provide a service that they can then tell the client, this is what I have to do to get your BREEAM excellent.
What we've got here is 2 responses. The first one was questioning how do people perceive the impact of designing out waste would affect whole project costs. So is it going to save you money in the overall scheme of things? Is it not? The other slide that we've got is it likely to directly affect your costs as designers?
No, I actually see that graph as quite positive, because I know you're picking up on the fact that some see it as a potential increase in cost, but that's implying that in each of those cases, the majority is thinking that it's not actually going to increase their costs. There's a no change aspect, and that actually I see as a very positive thing.
If you make it very clear, and you have information to demonstrate that by reducing waste at all stages, you do have an economic benefit, then everyone will be eager to do it.
I think clients are getting slightly more towards something that we've nicknamed the tipping point, whereby it's just starting to be reflected that 2 identical buildings, you will actually get a slightly better rental from the B rather than the C. And so therefore the tipping point's coming. If he's getting more rental, work it all the way back through, he can afford to cost slightly more.
The other aspect which came out of the survey was that there's fairly low awareness about designing out waste. So on the one hand, we've got low awareness, and then we've got people saying that actually they use their experience of it in order to inform their... so it's quite almost a bit of a conflict there in a sense, but an interesting result.
I think we have to recognise it's kind of early days, and it's only now, like you say, becoming talked about. Awareness makes a huge difference. Having gone through the case studies with RAP, it certainly is part of my thinking when we're looking at early design stages now, and look forward to having that tool to actually quantify it in the near future.
The net waste tool is a tool which we produced, and it's available through our website. By putting in cost plan information, detailed information about the project, it then in a sense gives a number of outputs. One of these is it highlights the biggest opportunities for increasing the recycled content in the project. The other aspect it does is it will quantify and highlight the biggest, the most likely sources of waste in the project, which elements of the building are likely to give the most waste, and quantify those in terms of waste, cost and carbon.
We try to think of waste in the wider context of the embodied energy of the materials, and there's a Danish tool we use which we found very valuable, which is called BEAT, and that analyses waste as well as the energy used in construction. It's been very useful for us. It has a limited context in Great Britain, but it helps us identify, for example, light fittings contain mercury and therefore produce toxic waste. By looking at this as part of a wider carbon argument.
But it did make me think, are the materials the right size still? Exactly. Because they've been that size for a long time. And they're still based on 4 feet, 2 feet, 8 feet, 10 feet, 5 feet, and just metricized. And that is pretty amazing, actually, isn't it? But it just made me think, is there something beyond this, which is about resizing our materials, considering the whole modular system so that we can actually make it suit the kind of ideas that we're having now about architecture and buildings and civil engineering and so on.
We've been working with NBT on a couple of early stages of projects using their thermoplan system, which is a metric system. It's on a 250 module. And unless you design for that, and going through our case study, we found that there are huge waste savings by using this system, but provided that you design window openings and floor plans to suit that system. And if you don't, then you get as much waste as everything else. But you have to take that decision really early on and kind of bite the bullet and say, right, we're going to design to that module.
We write a lot of MBS specifications. The schemes that they're operating don't necessarily find their way into the specifications that we write. So with all these things, you'll go out for a proprietary item and you'll almost ask the manufacturer to write their own specification. But you know that they're doing good stuff, but that doesn't appear in their MBS specification. They don't seem to have the joined-up thinking between doing what they think of as worthy schemes and a building specification.
Now, one of the principles of designing out waste is designing for reuse or designing for disassembly. And I wonder if there's an opportunity somehow at the planning stage to kind of record what materials are going into a building and are capable of being reused, or how it can be disassembled, that stays with that planning application. So 20 years down the line, you no longer need that building for whatever reason, bad planning, hey, but there's a record somewhere of what amount of material there is that could be reused. How many tons of bricks are there that could be reused?
I think we've come to a point where we've taken on a lot of people's views. Do appreciate everyone's time, obviously. You've been taking time out of your own working schedules and days.